So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Talking Stick Show. So, this morning I am joined by Suzi Crockford. Hello, Suzi.
Hello, hi Dale. Sorry, I'm just shutting it now so that we don't get an echo. Hi, nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. We spoke last May, was it? So that was just after we got the news of the lockdown. I think did we go on first lockdown? Was it March time?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Lovely. So, how's things been with you? How's lockdown been for you in a sense since we last spoke?
So mixed and varied. I mean, on the one hand, over some periods of time, I've hardly noticed it. And the main thing, if I was going to whinge about anything, it was like, no, I just want to go to the beach, which is 14 miles from here. And so, out of what's legally my patch. And so, I've been a good girl and I haven't been to the beach. But the rest of the time, I'm not a great one for going somewhere not here, So it's not had a massive impact on me geographically, but emotionally, not being able to go and see my friends, meet for a cup of tea, hang out in a girlfriend's house. I live exclusively with male beings, even all the pets except for the chickens are male. And so sometimes I really, really long for the company of women, and that's only got more and more and more intense over the sort of nearly a year, isn't it? Obviously,
Yeah.
I was able to hang out with some women at a distance at various times, but just that, snuggled up on the sofa, a really good cup of something hot, having a good chin wag, I long for it.
So for those who are listening have not seen you before, heard anything from you, if you want to just let everyone know a little bit about yourself as well and where you're from.
Okay, well, I am of Dartmoor, as as Martin Sheen would say, although I'm not specifically
Locked in.
from Dartmoor. Um, and I'm a shamanic practitioner, and I kind of occasionally call myself a witch because I'm slightly uncomfortable with the word shamanic practitioner, simply because the word belongs to the Tungus people of Siberia, and witch is perhaps the closest we've got in the British Isles to a word that remembers that we have our own wisdom and our own spirits and our own relationship with land and with those spirits. And so I practice as a healer and a teacher of these ways. And I'm also a maker of sacred tools of every fur and feather, it says on my profile. So I'll make you whatever, but it's mostly drums and rattles and the occasional feather fan and sort of,
Yeah,
sacred talismanic bundle or something people want.
I got some rattles off you, a few rattles actually, and I was gonna sell them, but I ended up keeping all of them. And, I've got two in my therapy room in York. I've got three here, two downstairs, and yeah, two of the kids have got one each as well. So
Oh, nice.
that was really nice. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the lockdown then, Suzi. So we spoke last year. So what has it been like for you in a sense of let's have a look at the positive things which have come out of the lockdown for oneself, and let's kind of go into that a little bit. So for you, what are the positive things you've learned from this lockdown?
So the positive things to me, though, the single most kind of physically evident positive thing is frankly, the ecstasy of looking at the sky and not seeing it full of airplane lines. That was massive for me, and it just made my heart explode with joy at the sort of then seemingly infinite capacity to connect with the wind or the birds or the sounds of this land without in the background, which I hadn't realized how much of that there was.
Yeah.
And obviously cars off the road too, the silence, to be able to hear the silence sometimes was beyond beautiful for me. I absolutely loved it. And that's a privilege, obviously, of living in somewhere that's not so densely populated. But I would imagine that that was a thing for a lot of people, that suddenly there were these moments when you could hear silence in a world that is not often silent. Other things have been just the joyousness of looking at things like taking the airplanes out of the sky, which was, you know, one of those big deals from the point of view of the ecology on our planet, that everyone was saying, well, we need to do that, at the same time as everyone was saying, oh, we can't. And we can, we did. And it's clear that we can stop bustling about our planet in quite the hectic way that we did before, and still, for, I think I'd seen, you know, I'm not an economist. I don't know. I'm speaking from a chair on a hillside in, you know, the southwest of England on a particularly countrified bit. I don't exactly have a bird's eye view of the whole country, never mind the whole planet. But it seems to me like for more people than it's really stuffed, lockdown has meant the capacity to bustle about less, maybe work from home, which for some people is clearly a good thing, although for others it's really clearly not a good thing. I know some people who've become horribly isolated because they are working from home and live alone, and, you know, haven't seen an actual living, breathing human being except for the sort of, you know, one in the queue at the supermarket or whatever. So it seems like there's potentially massive upsides. There's clearly massive downsides to all of it. I think another upside is how clear we seem to have become as a nation, but possibly as a world, about what's important to us. I think we've remembered our gardens, of course we have, which is wonderful, but we've also remembered how much we love each other and how tremendously important connection is. And although, you know, again, on the downside, there is an total epidemic of mental health issues, I think on the upside, there was perhaps an unseen epidemic of those very same mental health issues beforehand, because too many people were isolated and we didn't overtly take enough care in our communities to help those who don't find connection easy, you know, to facilitate that. We are becoming a ever more stay in your box society, and again, you know, that's made it better and it's made it worse. So
Yeah, it's felt like that for a lot of people as well, like working so busy, working all the time and having these so distractions. So you have to work to provide, you have to work to make money to survive, which is a crazy thing realistically if you look into the blueprint of it all. But yeah, for a lot of people, they've had that focus of doing something and feeling like this is their worth and this is what they should be doing. And this lockdown has given a lot of people the time off in a sense, so they can actually realize they've got all of this stuff they need to resolve in themselves.
and I think for the, you know, for those people upon whom the rest of us have relied, you know, those ones that we call the key workers, have, I think even they, even while they're, you know, pedaling so freaking hard to keep everything going, have also had an opportunity to have a changed perspective, even if it's only, blimey, I wish I had the opportunity to, you know, be furloughed and go and hang out with my family. And I think, again, that's one of the tremendous positives that's come out of this, is that the value of spending time with those we love, whether they're, you know, family by blood or the family of choice and of love and connection, that whether you've had the opportunity or you've not had the opportunity, the fact that it's a nice thing to do has become really clear. And our relationship with nature, obviously, which is like, to me, that's the kind of hugest one, which, so of course I didn't mention it.
We'll go into that. We'll go into that as well. It's funny you say that, because even my relationship with my partner, there was stuff which we kind of had unresolved because we were so busy doing so many different things, and being in the same house all the time has given us chance to be able to work through what we need to resolve in our relationships, look at my sexual intimacy, all sorts of things like that, and seeing what boundaries are healthy and what's not healthy. And for me, it's grown us stronger together this lockdown, because I've had to really give her a lot more space, in a sense, for her to go through certain stuff, for me to go through certain stuff. So in a sense, it's hard, because for me personally, this lockdown is as much as it's given me limitations and not being able to go out and speak to people, it's helped me in a sense really wean in on kind of the unseen level of what's going on in my life, and the areas I need to really kind of laser focus at some points, which I've been kind of procrastinating forward. So I've had all this time now where I'm like, right, I've got as much time as I want. I've got the online clients. I've not got as many clients because of we're doing everything online, and so it's given me that energy and the time to go, right, this is the time where I have to do that self work, and that and help heal parts of myself which didn't want to be healed before.
Great. Yeah, good news.
So yeah, so you as well, you've got a puppy, haven't you? So you've got some companion into your life.
Yeah, he's been heaven. I think in a way, this March is to me, it seems like the hardest, because it feels like the end's in sight, but we know that end's not guaranteed. But there's this kind of promise of at least 6 people outside, which will just be amazing. It means I finally get to see my godchildren and people like that, because we can go for a walk. Yeah.
Yay.
And so that my kind of, I feel like there's this sort of pent upness in me of like, oh my God, let March be over. And I don't like feeling like that. I like to savor every day. And so, yeah, having a puppy where you've got those restrictions of your puppy can't go out and meet other puppies or other people, or indeed the world outside, until it's at least, well, he is now. It's coming up this Friday. He's going to be allowed out at 14 weeks, having been a good lad and had all his jabs.
If I were a good lad. I
That's,
know.
yeah. Not impressed. And so that's been an absolute, godsend for me, because I wouldn't have been allowed out anyway, if you see what I mean, because I want to go out with him. And he, obviously, puppies are full time and full on at first. And so, yeah, I'm so grateful for him. And I do know also that apparently the instances of people getting dogs has skyrocketed, just like, everyone went into their garden. Apparently everyone has realized that, actually, do you know what, I do have time for a dog, and I do have the opportunity to go out for a walk twice a day, and there is room in my life for someone else to love who belongs to the other than human world. And again, as long as those dogs don't all end up in the Dogs Trust come the
Christmas
moment,
time, yeah.
come the summer solstice, when we're all actually allowed to go wherever we please, hopefully. Yeah, as long as those relationships are real and not props, then that's beautiful, because that's, a dog is clearly other than human. And so if you really fall in love with a dog, you give yourself the opportunity to fall in love with the rest of the non-human world in a different way.
And that's a great way of looking at it, because I do feel like a lot of people who suffer with depression or anything, that type of sadness, to have a companion, I believe they have contracts with us where they can help us come out of depression, where we get that connection to love again, and we understand that we can feel love, instead of feeling so kind of bitter, and like you don't want to do the self work on yourself, so you start getting bitter towards everything. Then the dog comes and you're like, oh, I can actually start allowing myself to love again. So you're not the bitter person. I've been there, I've done that before, where I've been love on, love off, and I've had to retrain myself to always kind of express love in that way.
Beautiful. Did you see the amazing piece of research that, I don't remember which state it was in, but in America somewhere, one of the um, prison penal authorities started bringing homeless, like stray dogs that had been collected up, into prisons, and training the prisoners how to train the dogs. And the magic that happened between those prisoners and those dogs, that transformed the prisoners' lives and the dogs' lives,
Wow.
was just exquisite. And I totally agree. I think we have some kind of spiritual contract between us and the canine world, us and the cat world, us and the equine world. Perhaps the cat world a little less. We know who's in charge with that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a cat called Maya, and she's literally just been spayed 2 days ago. So she's downstairs acting up a little bit before we let her out in probably about 2 weeks' time. And it's funny the contrast between the dog and the cat. That the dog's always "I love you" all the time, and the cat's kind of like "I love you," but you've got to work for a little bit, and you have to respect my
Bring
boundaries.
me my snacks.
But it's great because the cat's actually learned from the dog. So when the dog came in, the cat was always watched the dog. They are the best friends. We were a bit worried about them together because of the eyes of the dog, but we felt right. We're just going to allow them to be together, and they're the best of friends. It's really funny to see they're always play fighting, scrapping, and
Oh,
the cat.
gorgeous.
I know I was so nervous because I thought the dog was just going to attack the cat, and it was a big lesson for me to actually just allow everything to kind of naturally happen. And they've gotten a good relationship towards each other, and the cat's actually picked up from the dog how to get snacks and how to kind of, as a dog comes up to you and sits and looks up at the side, the cat does it. So when I'm getting like some chicken or anything like that, making something, the cat comes and sits down and looks up at me. So the
Classic.
cat's turned it into more of a dog.
Superb. Oh.
So and it feels like as well with what we're talking about, let's talk about responsibility, because I do feel in the sense of that having that relationship with a dog, and like you say with those people in prison, it gave them responsibility. Why is responsibility so important, being a human being, to overcome yourself in a sense?
Oh, responsibility is part of what we're here to do. And I think there's a conversation that Maggie and I have had on our Vicar and the Witch podcast about this idea that is really central to what we think we know about Christianity, which is that in the Bible, supposedly it says that God gave Adam, or someone, humans generally, Adam in particular perhaps, dominion over the rest of creation. And as usual, Maggie, who's able to speak and read and translate Greek, ancient Greek, in which this text is written, and most of them are, that we have, I believe, says it doesn't actually say that. It doesn't say dominion over in the way of like, I can be your master and I can do whatever I please to you because you're my property. It's more have responsibility for. And that's such a incredibly important nuance to me, and to have responsibility for, to be the one who is consciously standing up on behalf of the spirits as the human in this indivisibly interwoven and ensouled world, to have responsibility for making sure that that the balance of creation is upheld, making sure that we understand that we have a part to play, and that we're not inherently a blessing and so we don't get dominion over, and we're not inherently a blight. We don't need to be a problem for Earth. We're simply part of Earth. And if any god ever gave us anything by way of dominion, it was in that totally you are responsible, where where you see, just to take it into a slightly superficial and silly way, but it pans out to every strand of the web, where you see litter, pick it up, put it in the dustbin, and so that goes on. Where you see a broken creature, help it. Where you see the deer stuck in the fence, free it. Where you see people abusing any animal, stop it. Don't support them. Don't support them with your attitude. Don't support them with your money. Don't support them with your behavior, because
So
we are responsible.
so in the responsibility, why do you feel that so many people are not able to be responsible from themselves? So let's have a look at life in general. What are some of the situations we grow up and learn from the world or learn from the government, which stop us from being responsible. Let's kind of go into that a little bit and see the layers of how we are, how kind of the divine feminine, the masculine side is being suppressed, and we have to learn self-responsibility by going through our own awakening in a sense.
I think the main reason we don't take responsibility is precisely that we've been raised within a culture that says we have dominion over, and we've been massively raised within a culture that says that the kind of purpose of your life is to I mean, really, at the bottom line, within the consumerist culture, the purpose of your life is to acquire stuff. The subtext is that this will make you feel good and it will give you status. And so below the subtext is the subtext. That's what you're here for, to feel good and get status through the acquisition of stuff. Well, in the paradigm of dominion over, the acquisition of stuff doesn't require you to take any responsibility for what happens as a result of that stuff, how you acquire that stuff, who you trample on, whether human or non-human, in the acquisition and the creation of that stuff. We are not required to think about that at all on a cultural level. And so at a, you know, a really, really, really fundamental level, the air we breathe within the culture, the consumerist culture, is feeding us the idea that we don't have to take responsibility. All we have to do is pursue profit.
And it's been like that from when I grew up. I was in a high school, and I always the teachers telling me, "Oh, you can go into this, you can work for the government, you can do this," but there was never that empowerment of yourself. And one of the most important things to connect to responsibility is self mastery. And one of the so many things out there say you give your power away to a master, or you give your power away to some sort of god s being, or some sort of disconnect, some sort of being who says they're God. Like in the past, you have all of the goddesses and gods with different names, where people gave the power away to them and kind of saw them on such a higher level. So let's talk about self mastery, and why is self mastery important to have those skills of learning to know thyself.
Oh God, so many reasons. So as you just pointed out, self-mastery is the first step on the way to being able to take responsibility. You know, if you can't master yourself, then you're never going to be able to, for example, arrive in the supermarket, see that there's no option except to buy it in plastic, and take the, well, I'm not going to buy it then option. You know, it's at a really basic level, the curbing of the constant gratification of my desires is the kind of first step in along the path to self-mastery. But the know thyself part is crucial, because we all live in this indivisibly interwoven, ensouled web of life. We are all connected in ways that I think, it certainly in our culture, we never take account of. And so we forget that because we're basically, you know, plugged into the matrix effectively of the rest of what is, we forget that the rest of what is has a strong effect on us. And so if we're not super clear about who am I, not in the, you know, am I here to be a great healer or whatever, but who am I in the core of my being? What do I love? Who am I when I'm pissed off and sleepless? Who am I when I'm utterly in love? Who am I when I'm really, really hungry and perhaps a little hangry, as my kids call it, as a result? You know, who am I in my true self? If you don't know that, you can't know when you're being swayed by that connection to what is. And so you won't be able to find your thread in the warp and the weft of life, and you won't be able basically to kind of do the best version of you, and so feel satisfied and nourished by being you. And therefore, of course, you will go and buy things because that's what our culture says is a good way to feel better.
Yeah, the materialism, consumerism aspect of everything, where you grow up and there's so much marketing out there. It's all just
So
you
much.
you give away, because we want your money.
Mm.
So at the moment, so we're going into and coming out of, sorry, post lockdown, and what do you think if it happens again? Because my own honest opinion about it, how I feel of this year, what's going to happen is we will be back in lockdown at some point at the end of the year, and I've just got that sense, even though I don't want it to happen. I've got that feeling and that sense that we again, the government are lying to us in the sense that they kind of have a clue what's going on, but realistically they don't, and we're going to go on to another lockdown later on in the year. What would be your recommendation then for people to take it upon themselves to be responsible in the next few months, and how to handle if they do say we're coming back in lockdown, to not let it affect us like it has been doing? Because a lot of people you've seen blow up out, I've seen videos of people fighting, out shopping and stuff, because everyone has got this built up anger in a sense that they've got no control over their lives, and it's kind of it's on play, and they can't really do anything themselves to control it in a sense. I think that's the best way to describe it.
My goodness, that's such a hard question to answer. I mean, I'm not even sure I can. There's a little bit of me that just thinks, well, there's quite a big bit of me that it doesn't think we'll go back into lockdown, simply because if, you know, 3/4 of the country had been injected or whatever it is, then surely they can't justify that. And there is another bit of me that is, if we go back into another lockdown, I would have some very, very serious reservations about whether or not the psychological and the economic devastation that will be incurred by it are remotely justified. I mean, as I understand it, the recovery from COVID is like 98.6% or something.
It's
More
crazy.
people die of blooming heart disease or something than die of
Yeah, car
coronavirus.
crashes.
And yeah, exactly. You know, we're not banning cars or cigarettes or alcohol or any of those other things that kill us, and we've not all got to stay at home in case a bus runs us over. And
Yeah,
I don't mean at all to belittle people's suffering. I understand that people have died, unexpected people have died, and that it's been devastating. But it's not, you know, it's not the Spanish flu, I don't think.
yeah.
And so,
That's
you know, I really believe that if we give away our freedoms, we will never get them back. And I wouldn't like to say, frankly, what my reaction would be to being locked down again. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an economist, you know, I'm
yeah,
a witch living on a hill. And I guess really my response to it would be to go to the spirits and go, okay, what is the appropriate response here? Because I would arrive at the point where I completely don't believe what I'm being told anymore, rather than wobbling around in the middle going, well, it's probably, much of it's probably a smokescreen, but some of it's probably true.
it's I look back, Susie. If you look back, the 60s and 70s, which is very an interesting time. There was the so-called love movement, which was kind of made to look like it was just all drugs. But if you look back at 60s and 70s and do the research into the history, then they were actually marching in the millions against the government. And there's not many things about this in the media and all that, everything that's tried to make sure a lot of people don't realize and know about it. But there was a huge movement back in the 60s, 70s area where millions of people were marching saying, we're not having this anymore. And for me, that dream and that vision of the Native Americans call it the fifth world of peace, where we're able to all come together and we're all able to um, break bread together in a sense, and all the communities just say it's fine, let's all work together now. And it's so interesting because for me, like looking back at that era, it's inspirational what human beings can do when, like you say, we all come together and we all say enough's enough. I'm claiming my sovereign power and I'm not allowing to be controlled in the way we are being controlled.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's such a grey area, isn't it? It's so tricky to know. I mean, you know, God, Maggie and I have laughed about it a lot on our podcast. We came across the expression the post-truth era, and we live in a post-truth era. You just don't know who to believe anymore.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I read a great thing the other day, which was the most effective form of resistance is collective disobedience. And I guess personally, I'd be up for some collective disobedience if we get locked down again, because
Yeah.
although I can only massively state again, I am neither a doctor nor a scientist.
Yeah.
I don't feel that to keep going with this is what's best for us, which is, you know, the theory is that this is what's best for us. And maybe so far it has been, maybe it's only because we've been locked down that many, many, many more people haven't died. But there has to be a point where our capacity to keep the roof over our head and feed ourselves, and perhaps more importantly, our capacity to remain sane, you know, if we're not careful, the rate of suicides will outstrip the rate of people dying from coronavirus. There will come a point where our rights to gather and to see one another face to face and to hold one another are worth some serious civil disobedience.
Beautiful. And that's it. When I went out at first lockdown, I can always remember we had a ceremony with my friends, and I had to learn all those communication skills again. And I was so used to speaking to all of them on Zoom that when we had a fire ceremony straight after lockdown. We're all, the people who I have ceremonies with, we all met up, and I didn't know what to say at first. I looked at everyone and I was like, well, I best start, mate. And it is, you need that communication, you need that people with you always to kind of they inspire you, and it gives you the true meaning of connection and the true meaning of having soul family from different areas and all coming together and having fun, like you said, having a chinwag, just meeting up for a cup of tea. That's so important. And we have to really value those things.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, they are, you know, I know it's so difficult because we don't want to endanger the vulnerable. We don't want to make it so that anyone is at more risk than they kind of need to be. But I think we've become very myopic with this, and we're only looking at the risk from coronavirus, whereas there are other really serious risks that need to be taken into consideration. And I think abject poverty and emotional starvation leading to really serious depression are two risks that we should be, you know, equally giving credence for. And yeah.
And looking into it as well, I think when usually the bankruptcy happens in the first quarter, I do believe, or the second quarter of the year, and the amount of businesses which are going to file for bankruptcy coming in, I think maybe 2 months' time, it's going to be absolutely insane, the amount of businesses which have folded through this lockdown and not able to survive and come back.
Yeah. I went to my before, when we were allowed out briefly, whenever that was, September or something. I went to my local city, which is Exeter, and it was so depressing to see the number of empty shops that there were. Even, you know, some of the big shops I don't imagine that they've got as a whole gone bankrupt, but they've just pulled out of this area. But really miserable to see that it was almost exclusively the little independent shops that had completely gone. And then in the places where there was something in their place, it was bloody Costa Coffee. I mean, you know, no offense, but there were 3 of them within 100 yards of each other in Exeter city centre. Because, you know, that's what you're still allowed to do. You can go and get a takeaway.
That's it.
Mm.
And the star that we, yeah, that's funny. All on the lockdown, there was Starbucks and Costa still open, but all these other businesses weren't allowed to operate. And for me, it's been tough. I think the hardest thing for me with this lockdown would be not able to touch people doing the energetic like healings and everything. It's great doing them online, and you have that multi-dimensional connection and understanding that you can heal anyone no matter where they are. And for me, that touch and using that other skill of being actually with someone and touching them, doing energy healing, that means a big deal to me. And I realized how much it means to me to have that kind of space to be able to do it instead of me on this in on the Zoom room for over a year. It becomes a bit not I wouldn't say tedious, but it becomes that for me to expand on my own journey, I have to be out there with people, with groups of people. I've had problems with social situations in the past, and it's taken me a long time to be able to build myself up to have the strength and power to be able to, say, hold a circle or help someone. It's taken me a long time to build those skills up. And again, when I go back off this lockdown, I've got some training with people. I'm going to have to build up the skills again. I'm going to kind of have to start going and building it straight away, like jumping into the deep end, so to say.
Yeah, I can't wait to be able to hold groups again, you know, even if all we get to do is sit outside around a fire and you know, talk and share and use a talking stick and just deeply connect with the spirits and with the spirit of the drum and with the elements and with the outside, but in a group. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely can't wait. And although, you know, bless it, the internet's been amazing. And as you say, to be able to offer healing, which is kind of, you know, in a way, it's kind of obvious that you can offer healing over the internet because healing takes place in non-ordinary reality. And so, of course, it doesn't matter if you're over there and I'm over here. But as you say, the interpersonal connection, the vibe between our bodies is also a really important piece. And yeah, it will be a good day when we can get back to that day again. But also, you know, that's another of the positives of lockdown has been the way that more people have realized what's possible over platforms like Zoom, and therefore more people who live far, far away from anyone they've ever heard of as a shamanic practitioner have realized, oh, I don't need to travel to Dartmoor or York or wherever.
Yeah.
I can ask them to do distant healing for me. And I think that's probably been amazing for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
it has. And there's that perspective. I've spoken to people who do not do anything on Zoom at all because they don't agree with it. But in a sense, and looking at it like you were speaking just then, the importance of that connection. Say if someone, like you say, is alone on their own and they don't know about anything which is going on, and they have a little awakening, or they want to learn about spirit, they come see you, and you're doing a Zoom session, and that changes their perspective to actually want to go out there and actually talk to people, because that's one of the biggest situations I do feel with a collective. Not everyone, certain individuals, is the hermit zone, and making sure when you're able to go out there, not because I've been the hermit. I remember I used to have self-defeating programs. Oh, it's fine, I'll just stay in today, or I'll do this and I'll get on with this. And it's so important to actually notice that side of the hermit of ourselves and say, no, I'm not listening, I'm going out because I need to do this for my soul growth.
Yeah. And again, the that thing of, you know, I over the years I've heard so many people say it, you know, oh, I really want to do this work, I really want to connect, but I'm the only one round here. And now that you can connect with people who are not round here to do this work, again, that is, you know, that's good nourishment. That's better than nothing. And whilst
Definitely.
bodies in rooms is better again, better than nothing, still better than nothing, you know.
So we're going into responsibility. Let's talk a little bit about the dream weave and the spirit world, and how important that is to be able to connect to that.
Well, it's, you know, it's the source of true wisdom, utter compassion, total love, and the information about what it is we need to do in order to be the very best of ourselves. It's the place from which we receive healing. It is the place in which we are connected to all things. And so, you know, from my perspective, it's the water I drink, the air I breathe, the earth I stand on, the fire in my belly kind of thing. It's not possible to live without acknowledging it in a good way, as far as I'm concerned.
And there's
That
that way,
acknowledgement doesn't have to be massively overt, but
and that way of kind of looking back at all the traditions which have been destroyed. Well, not all of them. I feel like probably 80% of the traditions of all the Native American traditions, loads of different tribes from Australia, and looking back at their way of they were living with the land, and they were living in a way that they were between both worlds, and they were understanding they can get as much healing from the infinite world as a physical world. And that's one of the biggest things for me, has given me so much energy, happiness and healing, is to connect to that infinite world and be realizing that we are walking between both worlds in a sense. And it's just the world at the moment tries to completely take you away from it, and you have to really kind of put the foot down and say, no, I'm choosing to be between, living in this world and living in the other world at kind of at the same time. And I had a meditation this morning and yesterday, and it just made me want to write, because it gave me so much inspiration connecting to my ancestors, my totems, and to have that connection of that feel of the infinite world, to come back here and realize that we are walking between both worlds. And that gave me so much happiness, and it gave me inspiration to go forward onto my journey. So that was a really cool
beautiful.
experience.
I find it really interesting that all our metaphors are that the material world is here, and the world of the spirits, the other world, is somewhere else. And although that is, you know, that's a really clear, really beautiful metaphor, and it makes it very easy, for example, to learn to journey. If you know, okay, I'm here, I'm in material reality, I go to the center of my world, which is, you know, of course, a tree, and let's say I'm going to go to the lower world, I'm going to go over there to the tree, and then I'm going to go down to the lower world, which is also over there, it is somewhere else. And that makes it easy to facilitate, because with that wondrous tool of our imagination, in partnership with the spirits, we can go and meet the spirits. And that's obviously working brilliantly, you know, ever since Hana invented core shamanism and made these very, very, very clear statements about what, you know, how to get to the spirits in this kind of outside of any specific culture manner. Those metaphors have become the kind of the lingua franca, you know, the way of explaining it that's really pretty universal. And yet, and they're great, I'm not criticizing those, the simplicity and the clarity of them make it simple to learn, fantastic, simple to achieve. But what our culture has seemingly, even amongst, you know, those that are sort of talking shamanism some of the time, seem to have forgotten that that's a metaphor. That's not how it actually is. In actual fact, everything contains spirit and is contained in spirit. So the in-between is right here, right now. And as you say, we have the capacity always to walk in both worlds, because they're here. We are both worlds. We are in both worlds every moment. And what the choice, if you like, is not to go over there, but to realize what's here, and to pay attention, therefore, to the sacredness of all of life. And to the extent that the sacredness of all of life becomes completely redundant, because there is no unsacred thing. We understand that we are all made up of the divine.
Beautiful. And that's it, the multi-dimensional realizing. And I feel that maybe connected to responsibility would be to be responsible for being aware that you are multi-dimensional at all times, and you can
Totally.
exist on other universes or other planets at the same time, and not being held kind of by this Roman numeral time concept. And that's something which I've been working on a lot, is kind of detoxing from time in sense that with say your time zone, our time zone now, then I was trying to arrange a show with a lady called Nalini and Kelly, and Nalini lives in Thailand and Kelly lives in America. And what made me laugh was I had to sync them all between three time zones, and that's like this concept of time for me. It feels that the Roman numeral time is kind of, in a sense, it's held us back from understanding we are multidimensional and the spaces of no time which we can go to.
Have you ever read or heard of a book called, I think it's called, oh, it's not Tick. It's, the subtitle is A Brief History of Time, and it's by Jay Griffiths. It's totally worth your time if you're interested, haha, in time. Oh, it's not Tick, it's not Talk, it's Pip, A Brief History of Time, I think it's called. It's absolutely superb. She talks about the way in which the marking of time has, in many ways, completely stolen our freedom from us and our connection to the rest of the world with us, because it used to be, you know, time to turn up to work was shortly after sunup kind of thing, if you were working outdoors, for example, and time to go home was shortly before sundown. And so we were much more seasonal, cyclical, yada yada. Anyway, yeah. And the other thing is that what, just to go rewind a bit, the realization that the sacred, the divine is in everything, also then changes our responsibility towards the rest of life. To realize that the very same divinity that is in you and I is also in a sheep or a cow or a chicken or a blade of grass or a river or the sea or a fish or a carrot or a potato, you know, etc., etc., etc. That then the responsibility brings us back to reciprocity and to the understanding that the gift of our life and the gift of our ongoing existence is completely and utterly at the behest of the divine, but that it's there, given freely every day. You know, life, he, she, it, does not charge us for carrots or breath or water. And our responsibility is to be firstly, in gratitude for those gifts, but secondly, to then care for them, to make sure that we, all our friends and neighbours, all the four-legged, the two-legged, the finned, etc., the furred, have them, and so do our descendants, just as our ancestors, well, not so much in the case of humans, but just as the ancestors, you know, gave them to us. And that gratitude and reciprocity is a massive part of our responsibility.
And that's beautiful, you talking about that, and that made me think of the importance for me for taking more responsibility and really appreciating my life was understanding your ancestors and understanding that we have the responsibility to honor them, and we have the responsibility to pass this world on to the next future generations. And that for me helped me understand myself a lot more, that what I'm doing now in this present moment is going to affect the future, and it's going to affect the people to come in time. So learning those skills of love, learning how to say disconnect from time, and learning how to go into the spirit world. And that's why I really appreciate the shamanism path, in a sense, and all the aspects towards it and connected to it, because for me it gives me a sense of being home and being free, that I'm part of my blood, I'm part of my ancestors, part of the memory of my lineage. And it's a real honor to be able to honor the ancestors. So let's talk a little bit about the ancestors. Why is it important to honor the ancestors?
Can I quickly interject something else kind of to do with the
Of
ancestors
course,
before I
yeah, yeah,
properly
of
answer
course.
that? And that is that it's worth knowing that of all the carbon in the atmosphere right now, I think I'm right in saying that half of it has been put there in the last either 20 or 30 years. And so it is, you know, I gave a little jibe at the ancestors just then, but actually it's not the old ones, it's not your granddad who's to blame for the state we're in, it's us, it's those of us who are alive now, unless we are children.
Yeah.
And it's our unfailing commitment to consumption, which is responsible for the state of our world. Anyway, to go back to the ancestors, when within shamanic practice, when we use the word ancestors, we don't mean typically granddad at all, or granny, lovely as they were. We mean the well and wise ancestors. So the ancestors who have become kind of non-individuated again back into the wisdoms of the past. And again, this is outside of time, so the ancestors don't necessarily only dwell in the past. They can dwell everywhere, in the present, in the future, in other places that we don't even think of yet. And they are our word for the well and wise wisdom carriers of our various cultures, of all cultures, of cultures even that have been forgotten by us, long forgotten. And they are well and wise because they are no longer in any way attached to ego. So you don't become an ancestor by dying. You become an ancestor by going completely into the spirit world.
And that's so funny how you say that. Looking into the contracts, I always my opinion on everything is that there's kind of two types of life paths. There's the reincarnating someone who's going into, say, another lifetime where they're experiencing war or they're doing something really negative going over and over again. Then there's like the incarnating lifetimes where you do work on yourself, you realize how to kill off the ego, how to disentangle from time, how to be responsible for yourself. And then when you do die, there's more of, you're able to experience more things, because it's like a game, not a game, but it's kind of like a school in a sense that you've got all of these things to do, and the graduation comes. I'm not saying anyone's different than the other person, but like you say, the wise ones are able to go on to do different things, while the people who have been so stuck in everything which is going on here to kind of go into a bit of a repetitive cycle. But that's my own personal opinion on how I kind of look at life, that there's two realms as going into the reincarnating, where you're in war or you're part of a military, and then you go into another lifetime, you're doing the same thing over and over again, which I've done. I've been in war many lifetimes. I've been a knight, I've been a warrior, I've had to go and do loads of stuff because I had loads of lifetimes of just war, 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 war. And then I had to go back before the war and go to my positive lifetimes of living with the land. So it's so interesting. I love speaking about the ancestors.
They will love it that you speak about them. Because you know, as a culture, we don't typically do much by way of ancestor honoring. And again, you know, that's because we've forgotten our gratitude and we've forgotten our responsibilities. So obviously they gave us the gift of our life. No matter how far back you reach, someone is responsible for the gift of your life. And again, I can't emphasize enough how that doesn't mean you need to look at, you know, some deceased relative who maybe gave you a deeply horrible time when you were a child or whatever, and go, oh, I'm supposed to be grateful to you for the gift of my life. I mean, yeah, maybe a little shred of thanks for having a kid because I get to be here. But you know, that we don't, I'm not saying at all that those people that we have to somehow go, oh, you are now a well and wise ancestor. They're not necessarily. But that, yes, as we go back, we need to offer the ancestors our gratitudes. And you know, I think every people all over the earth that still have their ancient wisdoms, those ones that we call indigenous, speak about our responsibility to the ancestors to hold them in love, in remembering, in reverence, so that we don't forget that we too will die. And that relationship with death, that realization that we're just another teeny cog, which in many ways, you know, whatever your versions of karma are, I think karma is a really useful metaphor that helps us to be with, my life is tiny in the greater scheme of things, and I will die. And so what's important?
Have you seen that picture of the Earth on this? It's all I always go back to it when I need a bit of perspective. There's a picture of the Earth from the like the end of, I don't know where it's from, but you see the Earth as like this tiny little speck, and there's like millions of different stars, and you kind of then you realize, have a bit of a perspective that you are just.
Yeah,
It's yeah,
a
that's
speck,
so good.
a speck on a speck. And who knows, we might be platelets in the bloodstream of some inconceivably large creature. We just don't know. It's good to mess with these things. It's good to think about what else might we be other than the supremely important thing that we think we are.
And before we go as well, so one of the things I really appreciate from your work is your connection to your homeland as well, and I really appreciate going on and into responsibility. That's important as well, to be responsible for your own homeland and where you live, and that's part of your responsibility being given to you. So before we say goodbye, just talking a little bit about the importance, and for people coming out of post lockdown, what can they do to kind of be responsible more for their land and understand that?
Oh, the main one. I mean, that's, I don't wish to sound like a, I don't know, middle class old granny or something. I don't know. But actually, what immediately comes up for me there is, for God's sake, take your bloody litter home. In all seriousness, it's not just because it doesn't look pretty when you throw it out of the window on a lane. That stuff does serious damage to the wildlife, serious damage. You would be amazed by who will try and eat a McDonald's wrapper or get a beer can ring stuck, those plastic things stuck around their neck or whatever. And then secondly is, as soon as you're allowed anywhere near anything resembling the wild or countryside, or even just, the tree down the road, go and offer your gratitude. We breathe because of trees and oceans and great swathes of grasslands. We eat because of trees and oceans and great swathes of grasslands. We are because of those things and because of the water and the river. And so to go to those places and just go, thank you for my life. Thank you for my life. And to treat them with the love and respect that you would the perfect mother, because she is our perfect mother. She's not our flawed, grumpy in the morning, wouldn't buy me sweeties when I was 10, baggage of a
Tidy
mother.
your room.
She is the perfect mother who has given us and everything else that we have life. And so to go and remember that and remember our connection to her, to each other, to all other creatures, and to feel some gratitude for the gift of it is so important. And again, on a purely psychological level, gratitude makes us feel good, and that's a fantastic antidote to the potential misery that lockdown might have been. But even in lockdown, we can find that gratitude, even if you live in a 40 foot up in a, or more, inconceivably high in a titchy space, completely separated from nature. All the playgrounds are locked. There's not a tree for miles, etc., etc. It's still out there. The water still comes out of your tap. The air is still, making you able to carry on. The food that you eat still originated in nature, and we can therefore still find that connection and be grateful. Pour yourself a glass of water, bless it. Know that it is in itself a blessing. And
Standing it.
you make that holy water not in a weird Christian way, but in a profoundly lovely way. No matter what's happened to it as it's been on its journey, maybe it's just been recycled round a city hundreds of times, it's still the water of life, the sacred vessel, part of whatever, of all of existence. And so it still is deserving of your gratitude and can be made into a total and utter communion with intention and blessing.
And when I've been eating my food as well, that's something I really honour, the being who I'm sharing flesh with and space with. And
Yeah.
before I eat the being, I always say that I'm grateful in honour of you and thank you for your service, as I share my love with you and have that connection that that being has chosen to come into that lifetime to be slaughtered and to giving service to the future generations, and to know how important everything little thing is going into that. That's when we feel we kind of take up on the responsibility of knowing thyself.
Yeah.
So yeah, Suzi, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really, really enjoy speaking to you. I love the layers we kind of go into today. It's been very inspirational.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to speak to you too, and
Thank
enjoy your puppy as much as I'm enjoying mine.
you. And how, so what's coming up for you in the future, and how can people get a hold of you?
So they can get a hold of me on my website, which is suzicrockford.com. They can listen to my seemingly endless witterings on The Vicar and the Witch, Wise Women, The Vicar and the Witch, which is myself and a vicar, Maggie Whitehouse. And that's on Podbean and Spotify, and I think some of them are on YouTube. Yeah, but I think everything is accessible and mentioned, actually not The Vicar and the Witch, must put it there, on my website, which is suzicrockford.com. And there'll be more Facebook lives coming up, there's workshops, although to be truthful, they are mostly full already for this year, because obviously there are so few of them, because they've all got to be rammed in and they can all only be for a few people. So yeah.
Lovely. So yeah, I'll pop all the details as well on the YouTube, and there's the website under the Facebook video as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and I really appreciate everyone's support as well so far. This was a vision of mine early last year, and it's great to have it, me dreaming it and doing it. So thank you again, Suzi, and you have a lovely day. Take care.
You too. Nice to see
Thank
you.
you, everyone. You too. Bye bye. Bye bye bye.